Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to do just that. We're going to tackle. We've got a viewer who sent me in a reel. It just came in yesterday's mail, and it came in a bag, all pieces and parts. So I had a conversation with them prior to them mailing it out, and from what I understand, it's the Penn 330, and it was something that got taken apart, and then things exploded inside, and we had one of those aha moments in terms of what do I do now? And their answer was they saw me rebuild this on YouTube, so can I put it back together for them? So we'll do that. We're going to do a cleaning. I just noticed as I took this out there's some greening going on here, some other little issues. But let's go over the process. If you happen to take a reel apart and had the thing break on you, explode all over the place, or picked one up at a flea market, or did whatever. I'm just cleaning up some of the dust as we're going through here. But if any of those things have occurred and you had that oh boy moment, then what can you do? How can you go about it? Well, the first thing is have a little bit of mechanical savvy, but after that, the short-term answer is to follow this video, and hopefully we'll be able to help you along with that. So almost all of the pens, you can get the schematic, and that's going to be very important in this one, because not only are we going to want to know the order that they go in, but we want to make sure that all the pieces and parts are here as well. So go out on the internet, do a search. In this case, it was pennparts.com. I believe that website may still work. If it doesn't, it's mysticparts.com, which is the new iteration of it. They're an authorized Penn parts distributor. Pull the schematic. In this case, it's the 330. Pull the schematic, and we're going to go through kind of a mental checklist, but you can make this very much a physical checklist. If you're coming down, just check off each piece and part as it comes out of the bag. So we have the frame assembly. We're going to do a cleanup on this in addition to doing putting it back together again. And I'm just going to hit this quickly with some penetrating oil, because I noticed there's some dried grease on the bearing back here. So I just want to get that out of the way. See what we can do to clean that up. And I want to make sure that bearing is turning, so I'm going to use a little screwdriver on the inside, and that shows me that the bearing is turning. Next thing, while I have the case off, I want to take the idler gear, that's the plastic gear here, and I want to rotate that and see if that's turning the worm gear, and it's not. It's oh, there we go. I think there we go. A little tension. All right. So it looks like it's working, but maybe suboptimally. I'm going to take some real oil, in this case Real X. I'm just going to put a drop in there, see if that can't help it along a little bit. There we go. Now we seem to be moving a little bit better. And we're going to use that same Real X on the bearing on the back here. And I get a lot of questions about what kind of oils to use. And I suggest always using oils that are designed for fishing reels. That one's a synthetic from Real X. Here's one from Penn Precision. And I was just on Amazon the other day. They had their Prime Day, and just looking around for fun. And I decided to search on fishing reel oils and greases. And they have a Penn Angler pack there. It has both the Penn Precision Reel Grease and the Penn oil. Now, not in these sizes, but you could buy these sizes on Amazon. But they have an angler pack that has, I think, an ounce of the grease and 2 ounces of the oil, or whatever it is. And that's perfect for rebuilding the reel. And the thing was under $5. So don't go crazy trying to figure out what the alternatives are. Simply go ahead and buy something like that and put it away for when you need it. Okay, and then I just noticed there's a little bit more dirt on the inside of this crossbar here, so we might as well get those while we're at it. Alright, so that's the frame, and the frame seems to be working, and that has a lot of pieces and parts to it. We're going to do one more service here. Just going to move this over to the side. We're going to make sure that we have that pawl assembly oiled as well. And you'll notice a couple of things while I'm doing this. I have a protective glove on my hand, especially when we get to do things like this with lots of oils and grease and cleaning. I just don't like to get that stuff on my hands. Okay, we move the pawl assembly over to the side. We're going to pull the screw from the pawl cap. I need a bigger screwdriver. There we go. And you have a pawl, you have a line guide, a pawl cap, which is what we're removing now, and the pawl sits inside of that. And I'm noticing there's some saltwater corrosion tarnish on there, so chances are this hasn't been oiled in a while. So we're going to go ahead and take that out. We're going to check the pawl while we're at it. The pawl is a forked piece. This is the pawl. It has a fork, 2 teeth. It's got a little bit of junk on it, so we'll take that off while we're at it. And then it sits inside this cap, which is just an inside circular part. I'm going to put a drop of oil in there and put the pawl back so that it rotates easily. And then I'm going to come up here and then rethread this. Now when you go to reset a pawl, you just have to be careful and you have to work with it, because you can bend those teeth putting them back in. And so what you want to do is you want to snug it and you want to make sure it's free, and you want to keep moving it along until the teeth sit inside these grooves on the worm gear. Don't just go cranking it down figuring that brute strength is going to fix that. Typically it won't, and you'll get stuck and you'll have a bad pull. So just kind of do what I'm doing here. It's sliding along, it hasn't set yet. I think we already have it. We'll check. Nope, we don't have that. Probably have one tooth in, but not the other. There we go. We got it working now. All right. So that's what you want to do to set the pawl. And then you can, some folks like to use the blue grease on this. Some folks use oil. I tend to use the oil. I don't like how the blue grease tends to trap particles and sediment. Okay, so that's that. Let's go see if we got the spool, because that would be the next thing. And we do have a spool here. And we have a spool here, and it appears that we have a frozen gear on it, which is probably what's caused the issues here. Okay, well this is substantially more work than just reassembling this. You're going to have to get that spool gear off. We've talked about how to do that in the past. I'm just going to check to make sure that it's a good spool gear first, which it is. And now here we go. We're going to use that penetrating oil again. Kind of give it a shot. We're going to use heat. That's oil there, so remember it's going to be hot and it's going to be... This is a typical plumber's torch. We're going to heat that spool gear up. It will move at a different rate than the internal spool shaft. And when you see the bubbling on that penetrating oil, it generally says that you have enough to free it. Remember, that's hot when you're working with it. Next up then is to take some padding. I generally use a steel wool and the pliers. So grab a new piece of steel wool for that. The pliers. You don't want to get the plier ridges caught up in this. And then you want to work this back over the gear. And just kind of wiggle the spool. You can't twist it, you have to wiggle it. And there you go, we have the spool gear off. Now we should be able to take the bridge off, let that cool down a little bit. I'm going to use that same steel wool now to take all that rust and junk, and that's a hot shaft there, so be careful with it. Okay, so we've got the shaft done. So now we're going to put the spool in, because that's going to tell us how to... This should make this ride easier, and it does, and that's what we were looking for here. Just want to make sure that the line guide moved easily and it's turning everything, and it is. So that part's pretty much back where it belongs. And now let's go take an inventory of some of this. We have a lot of junk on the bridge here. That same steel wall with a little bit of cleaning. I use a chrome polish here. It's an automotive polish. I'm going to put some of that on the steel wall. It's a mild abrasive. The steel wall is the least of the grades. It's the finest. It's 4.0 steel wall. So use that if you need to get a mild abrasive in there. We're going to try and turn our... we've got a completely seized assembly here. This is more than just a something came apart kind of a deal. Let's see if it turns at all. So this is another one where heat needs to be used to pull this off. But I don't know where this one's been soaking, but it certainly has had its problems, and I'm not sure if it's repairable. So take another look at this. Just looking for a pin right now. You need to pull the, here it is. You need to pull the pin from the gear sleeve. To do that, I use a centering pin, and I use a dead blow hammer to pull the pin out. You'll also notice that I have a parts tray there. That parts tray is what's getting all of this back together again. So that when I go to reassemble, I know where to look for this stuff. And this one looks like it's probably went on a trip. Somebody probably did not take the time at the end of the trip to hose it down, put some oil on that on there, and this is the result when this whole water gets in there. It doesn't get used for a while. So I'm gonna, next up then, we're gonna find the wrench that holds, that would be this one. I'm gonna put this one in a vise now because I'm gonna need to turn that. So I have a bench vise, and it's probably off camera to you, but I'm gonna just apologize and tell you we're gonna do the same thing that we just did. We're gonna go heat that up. That's what we're doing right now. Kind of waiting for the sleeve to get hot. I'm going to take my wrench and see if we can't turn it, which we're doing fine now. We're starting to turn it. And that just freed it up. So I'm going to show you the results of that. Again, these are hot, unfortunately. So what I just did there was apply heat to that. That probably said that there was some mild rust, but there was also some corrosion going on in there. And you can see now, tough for the camera. Let's do it, see if we can do it this way. You can see how we have that gear sleeve turning. And I'm just going to let that sit for a moment or two or three or four, and then we're going to pull it off. And we're going to go ahead and do that. So while we're at it, I'm going to go into the bag then, find the handle. The rest of it looks like we have the rest of the drags in there. You can find the handle, or you can find the star adjuster nut. Either one of them is fine. In this case, the star adjuster nut came out first, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. You just want something that you can get some leverage to pull this out with. You can screw the handle on, or you can put the star adjuster nut on. Either way, just get yourself some leverage there. And then when this tightens down, you'll see we're turning again. You can see how it's turning now. And I've pulled the pin, so I should be able to pull that gear sleeve out. So one more shot of this with the penetrating oil there, just to kind of give it some loop behind it. Again, I'll be off camera for a second as I go to pull that off. And there you go. So now we see the cause of this particular problem. This is our bridge, and you can see all the rust and dried grease. And this Has 2 slots, and you can see this slot in particular has got a lot of dried grease in it. This is the one that the pin rides in, but we were lucky to save that bridge. And now we have my gear sleeve here. I'll take the star adjuster off. Again, back to that penetrating oil. I'm just going to set this upside down. I'm going to hit both of these. Just get some on the inside because that's where the rust is. Same idea there. Now I'm going to use my steel wool again on this shaft to free all of that up. That should be able to clean it up. And this viewer here is going to be lucky, I think, to have a reel that goes back together again. And we got the greening on the side here, so we might as well get that off at the same time. Now you can use the steel wool, or you can use a little flat, very fine file. It'll serve the same purpose. You just don't want to leave anything there. If you can avoid it, go right ahead and just try and clean it up a little bit. I call this doing the laundry, but that's kind of what we're doing now. We're just kind of making sure everything is nice and clean, which it is. We've had that penetrating oil sitting on the back of this gear sleeve now, so let's just take the file for a moment and just get some of that greening off of there. That works nicely. And now you can see why I'm wearing that glove, because there's a lot of stuff going on here. And then I'm going to use a cotton swab inside just to clean out whatever the residual was there with the rusted activity. And then we're going to go put it back on. So we're going to take that blue grease that I was showing you before. I'm going to grab a little, I use a screwdriver, drives people nuts, but I'm going to use a screwdriver to reinstall. I'm going to put some blue grease on there and slip the gear sleeve over that. And look at the way it turns now. So we went from a frozen gear sleeve to one that's just doing what it should be doing. And I'm going to go back to my parts tray, because that's where I put the pieces I take out. I'm going to find that little pin, and we're going to insert that pin into that hole, and we're going to tap it back in with that dead blow hammer. And if this is off camera, I apologize as well. I didn't quite think this is what I was going to be doing on this video, but that's okay. Surprises are out there. Okay, so we have that gear sleeve back on now, and that's working just the way it should. So next up then is the main gear. We got a bunch of pieces and parts there as well. I noticed that there's corrosion on the back of this as well. Looks like it spared no prisoners when it was sitting wherever it was sitting. And so it's time for a general service. I'm just going to take that little file there, knock some of the more difficult stuff off, take this steel wool and clean that up. I'm looking for the hard washer now. And again, if you don't know the sequence on these, then it's a good thing to go back and look at that schematic. So this is a good time to kind of do a parts check. We have the schematic. We're working on this now. We had the bridge. Now we're looking for a hard washer, the main gear, and then a series of fabric and metal gear, metal washers. Noticing that there are 2 eared washers staggered. So here's the first one is in there. Let's pull this out. We'll show you how it works. First one, second one, first eared washer. Let me just move these up the chain here. And I know I got a dartboard, so I apologize if that's kind of what it starts to look like. And then I get a second set that's going to do the same thing. And I should have one more washer, I believe. Oh, there it is. So that's the way that this is going to set up. And then we need the hard washer for the backing here. And I'm not seeing that right here in this particular bag, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Oh, there's the cap washer. Okay. Oh, well, there it is. It's on the gear sleeve. Okay. So we're in good shape. We're going to just check this now, because we do know that there's a lot of stuff going on with this reel. Just going to knock some of the green off the collar here. That doesn't matter too much. Just checking to make sure all the teeth are in place, because that's what eventually is going to drive the reel. And we know we had a frozen spool gear, so we want to make sure on that. Now these are fine. I'm going to grab a little bit of the blue grease and just a couple of spots along the reel. I'm just going to place some, not a lot. It's going to work its way in, but we do know we had a frozen one, so let's make sure that we get some oil on there. Okay, that goes on. Then I'm going to grab some Cal's Universal Drag Grease. I'm going to put that on these HT100 drags. Now, the drags are in good condition here, so there's no need that they get replaced. I just put a little bit on, again with that gloved hand. I use it to rub the grease in to keep a little bit of a sheen on it. If you put too much on, wipe it off with a paper towel. I'm going to just put them out just the way I laid them out. Next one up is going to do the same thing, so this going to get a little bit redundant here, but that's okay. That goes on. Next is the eared washer. Those go in the slots. Make sure you get them in the slots because they'll be ineffective if you don't do that. Back to moving this up. Those of you that want to go for a cup of coffee, I have 4 more to do. And we'll put this one back on. Another one of the fabrics. Second of the eared washers. Get it in the slot, last of the fabrics. Rub that in there. Last of the majors. And then there's a little cap washer that goes on top. So that's the bridge. And now we got a bridge that not only is cleaned, but looks good too. Okay, and then we got this a little bit of junk on this bearing here. We want to make sure that that's working. We use the same thing we did. We're going to just turn it. I'm going to grab a flat-bladed screwdriver, put it in there, make sure it turns, which it does. And then I'm just looking for that reel oil again. Got a lot of stuff out here because quite honestly, I wasn't expecting to do this kind of stuff, but hey, we're in it now. All right, so that's the bridge assembly is done. We can cover up some of this with caps. And I'm just going to shut this video off for a moment and clean up the table a little bit because I got a lot of stuff going on here with the torches and things. I just want to put it all back together so that it makes it a little bit easier. So just bear with me for a moment. Okay, so we're back. You can probably tell I put some of the cleaning activities away. The other thing I did while we were away is I just emptied the other 2 bags. They had the side plate and some miscellaneous stuff in there. And so let's go to work on that. I'm going to put the bridge assembly off to a side for a moment. And use another container. I have plenty of these containers, but obviously I got a full set here. All right, side ring here. This is a trim ring that's going to go on the gear side plate. Just clean the inside of that up. Clean the outside of it up. Steel wool does fine for that. I use a lot of paper towels. I use a lot of cotton swabs, but you know, you can use microfiber rags and things like that if you like. Here's your handle. Let's make sure that gets cleaned up. It's the last of my worries at the moment. I want to make sure that all those other pieces and parts are in here. Put that in the tray as well. All right, here's the gear side plate. And kind of tells the story. Right inside we got a lot of dried grease and junk in there. Another shot with the penetrating oil. And penetrating oil is kind of a degreaser. At least that's what I use it for. Don't use it to oil your reels. Just going to break down oil if it's going to do anything. It's not a general purpose lubricant, but it is good to break up rust and like. Okay, so we just clean that up a little bit. Everything's missing on this, right? So we got to go back and rebuild this thing completely. I'm going to look for the Eccentric now. And again, if you had any questions along the way, go to your schematic. Here's where I'm working right now with the Eccentric and the spring, and we're going to try and work on the back of that. This one's got some grease on it, so we're going to do the same house cleaning kind of thing here that we did before. So you can only guess what the causes of all of this was, but it's pretty clear that it was out fishing and somebody came back and didn't do what they should have done along the way. So, okay, so here we go. With the Eccentric, there's a little mounting point in there. I'm going to apologize again if I'm off camera with this, but we'll do what we can do. Alright, that's your mounting of the Eccentric. It's not fully in there. You do need to rotate this slightly, and I use a needle nose pliers with a careful grasp. This thing is brass. You don't want to wrench it too hard, but you do need to get it into the slot and push down, and I find that the needle nose pliers is the best tool for that. Once you do that, you'll have enough room where you can grab that trip lever, the release lever for the free spool, and we should have the free spool screw, which we do. And just on a quick eyeball, I don't notice that I'm missing anything here. I had a little bit of a quick thought when I was looking for the anti-reverse dog, and I see that the spring that is actually what I was looking for is in there, so that's good. All right, we're going to take this trim ring, which I probably should have done first, but I didn't. I just slip it in behind that lever, turn it until we get that little cutout underneath the gear housing, and that's it. If you didn't know that existed, that's a way to do it. If not, put the trim ring on first, save yourself the trouble. Let's come back to this side then. We're looking for the two screws that hold the yoke. Got those. I said screws, it's springs. Alright, and another example that this thing has been sitting a long time now. Same deal, lots of corrosion. That's a brass part. It's starting to look like the Statue of Liberty there. I'm going to apologize if I am shaking this too much, but same procedure as we had before. Just use that. And pay particular attention here. That's where the spool gear is. If you have a little bit of greening left over on the sides, that's kind of fine, but you know, I'm going to do it, you might as well do it the whole way. Same idea on this side, we got the same thing going on here. And that's, the yoke is going to hold the spool gear. That's what we're kind of up to right now, just trying to clean that up. And you want to get as much of that as you can off, because the jack, which is going to move this in and out, is going to ride on that, so you don't need any rough spots along the way. Speaking of the jack, this is the jack, same idea here, right? We got some green. We go ahead and use a little bit more of that auto polish there. It's a chrome polish. Turtle Wax makes it. Any kind of mild abrasive, I'm sure. Go get brass cleaner or some other kind of metal polishes would be fine. Alright, and then just take it off the back as well. And we should be pretty close to ready to install this now. Just clean off that abrasive so that it doesn't wear in the future. And while I'm at it, I got this dog and the dog spring, and that was my biggest concern, that the dog spring wouldn't be here. But it seems to be wedged down pretty good there, so I'm just going to clean that dog now. I'd hate to delay the install of a reel over a $2 part. But it's happened. Actually, I'm waiting on one right now. I'm rebuilding a Abu 7000 Ambassador. I got one crazy little spring that's missing. It's on back order, so just go figure. Alright, so we're good on all of these then. We got a little bearing pressure, spool pressure cap that goes on this side of the plate. When I did that, all the springs came loose under the yoke, so let's go back here and do this. While we're at it, it doesn't hurt to put a little bit of a touch of grease onto the Eccentric, so let's go do that right now. And that's enough for that. Alright, the yoke, just where we cleaned it up, we're going to go put some grease. That's where that spool gear that we had to fight to get off this, the stem of the spool. Grab that. Check the teeth on that. Make sure we didn't damage it with the pliers. And again, put a little bit on that because we know that's real dry now because we just heated it. We much burned off any lubrication that was on there. Okay, when you install that spool gear then, there's two sides to it. The short side with the slot goes out to accept the spool. Steady that on top of the two springs, push that in, grab the jack, and that's the assembly for the top end. Once you put the top end assembly in, comes the bottom end. We're going to grab the assembly, push down, insert the main gear, turn it approximately 180 degrees. We want a fully threaded screw. And notice we got some green on that, so put a little bit of oil on it just to loosen that up. Fully threaded screws go on the bottom of the assembly. And then we want that dog. The notch on the dog faces down. That spring is going to get attached up here on the post, but does not have to be done right away. So what we're going to do then is we're going to rotate this until that screw lines up with the hole. And then we can, oops, that screw just came out. There we go. There's two little centering pins here. You want to make sure you got them centered. That those little plastic studs are in there. And then I just tighten this just a little bit, just to get it to grab. I want to make sure that I get all of the other pieces in before I tighten them all down. And what I do, we got a partially threaded one now that goes into the spring sides. And I'll just go in an X pattern. Top, bottom, kind of northeast, southwest. Again, not fully tightening. Full threaded screw goes to the bottom. And then the top partially threaded screw goes through the other spring. And you'll notice I'm kind of jiggling it. Sometimes it doesn't come into alignment right away. Use that pin that you have. Use a centering hole, use a finishing nail, use any of the above. And you can kind of see what's going on. If you're having some difficulty, here's another one. Just push it down a little bit from the inside. Either way, just make sure you have a clear channel where you can get that screw through. Right now I'm just kind of hitting a little bit, so, and that's trying to get that screw through the yoke there. And this is why I don't tighten everything down until they're all in. I got it that time. I just flipped the free spool lever. That was what was in the way over there. And then once you do that, you can generally tighten it down the rest of the way. There we go. Now I'm getting oil over everything because I've squirted it there and I've left my screwdriver in there. So another reason why you want to have that gloved hand there. Okay, once I have that, you want to go back kind of the same way you just did, sort of northeast, southwest to tighten them all down. Back over on this side, tighten this one down. Alright, now we're looking for the ferrule or the gear sleeve. I know I have this because I just used that to take the bridge off before. This is the star adjuster, which is reminding me that I didn't put the anti-reverse dog spring on as I kind of working at, so I grabbed that little tag on the spring with the pin, kind of a multi-purpose tool here. And it is a spring, so be careful with it, it can shoot. It takes a little patience, but eventually you do get it. And I don't have it yet. now. So that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to line that spring up with that post. Now I have an anti-reverse. Now I should be able to put the star adjuster back on. Let's give it a spin. Oh yeah, look at that. We're ready to go. Rock and roll. All right, we know we had it frozen on here. We cleaned this off with the steel wool. Let's just put some grease on there, just to keep that fresh, especially as it goes inside that spool gear that froze. Here's the shoulder on the spool. That's why that little notch sits out. And go ahead and line this up now. That's your side plate assembly. We'll give it a, oh, look at that, huh? Brought it back from the dead. All right, we've got a bunch of side plate screws. Hopefully we got enough. Now some folks usually ask me at this point, what about 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 screws you got to go drive? How about the mechanical screwdrivers? And my take on those is I don't like them. I like working with my hands, even though this particular screwdriver at the moment's got a lot of oil on it from working on that bench there. But if you need it, if you don't have the hand strength and you need one, I would say go ahead and do it. But as you do it, make sure that you don't drive it all the way in. These are graphite frames. You can over tighten it, you can crack the frame, and then you're kind of out of luck. So I would tell you leave it short and finish the last turn or 2 or 3 with the hand screwdriver. But otherwise, go right ahead. I noticed sometimes with those mechanical screwdrivers and the torque that they have, you can also strip heads trying to take them out. So just be careful with them if you need to use them. Like I said, I don't use them, but then again, I like to work with my hands, and hand strength, at least to this point in my life, is not an issue. Alrighty, so one more after this. I've got it on my deck there. So if something was missing at this point, I would go back and reference that that schematic, but it looks like everything that they said they were putting in the bag, they did. And it looks like we're pretty much ready to go to a test drive here. Just the handle and the handle screw nut remains. Notice that I do have a little bit of tension on the screw. That's the spool tensioner. Look at that, huh? Small miracles. Okay, handle goes on. Now if we did not pull that gear sleeve and we did not put the lubricant under there, you could put the oil under there. That's what Penn says right on here. It says oil. Actually, it doesn't say oil, does it? Well, most of them say oil. But you would pull that, and you could put that on with the oiling just to keep that loose. And why do you do that? Well, we saw what happens when you don't do that. The piece worked free, right? Froze up. Okay, I'm tightening now, and when you tighten, you got to make sure that the little indent in the screw lines up with the screw hole. Almost. Otherwise, you can't put the set screw in. There we go. One set screw. Oh, there goes that one. I will pick that up in a minute, but you don't need to see me on the floor for 2 minutes going to find it. So let's just do the test drive on this one, make sure we got it going. We do. This reel's ready to go fishing. We'll take it in free spool, make sure that it runs in free spool. It does. There's a little bit of spool chirp. That wouldn't surprise me with the problem that we had with this reel, but you know what, that spool chirp will most likely go away when you load line on it. But everything else is working the way it should be working. Drags are in good condition. Reel is moving right along. That one's ready to go fishing again. So I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to wish you a good day. I'm going to tell you that if you enjoy this, please like it on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, because I post frequently. And if you want to see more of them, that's the best way to do it, to get those notifications ahead of time. So with that, I'm going to thank you. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day. Okay, just because there's always one skeptic that wonders if I found the screw, I found the screw. That's a prologue. Thanks again for watching.